Today I want to talk about an inspirational Japanese racehorse. One who was so stirring that they left an indelible mark on the history of Japanese horse racing forever. One who would leave behind a legacy so great that it would force the very fabric of horse racing to shift, granting more opportunities than ever to those who came after them. Misho Mambo. But before we can talk about Misho Mambo, we should probably first talk about this random horse from Kasamatsu. And then turn him into an anime girl. Oguri Cap, you might have heard of her, right? She was in Season 1 of the umamusume anime, Season 2 of the umamusume anime, she was one of the units on the initial banner of the game, and she also has her own anime if you can believe it. In an episode of said anime, Oguri Cap expresses her desire to run in the classic Triple Crown races, the Satsuki show, the Japan Derby, and the Kika show. However, those races have stringent regulations in place when it comes to what horse can enter. For example, the classics are only open to 3-year-old horses, which Oguri Cap didn't have a problem with. There was, however, the small matter of the registration period. In order to participate in the classic Triple Crown or Triple Tiara races in real-world Japan, you have to register 3 times, which comes with a series of registration fees. The first comes in the October in their 2-year-old year for 10,000 yen, the second in January of their 3-year-old year for 30,000 yen, and the final registration payment 2 weeks before the Japan Derby is held for 360,000 yen. That comes to a total of 400,000 yen, or converting with today's money and current year lazy pie eater money, which we really shouldn't be doing, a little over $2,600. Now, that may not sound too terrible, but the main problem was when Oguri Cap transferred from the regional racing scene to the nationals. Oguri Cap was born in March of 1985, but transferred in January of 1988, meaning that despite being 3 years old that year, the opportunity to register him was missed since the first registration window was long since over. Subsequently, Oguri Cap didn't race any of the classic races, but had a dominant 1988, having a podium finish in all 10 races he participated in, which included first place victories at the Arima Kinen, Yonsai Stakes, and a record-setting win at the Takamatsu no Miya High. Since this ended up being arguably Oguri Cap's best year, especially from a monetary standpoint, a lot of folks started to ask the what-if question. Critics and horse racing fans alike started to cry out for change after the Satsuki show was won by Yaino Miteki, who Oguri Cap defeated in that year's Mainichi High. Comparisons were made to another horse who wasn't allowed to enter the classic Triple Crown races over a decade ago, Maruzensky. Maruzensky's situation was a bit different from Oguri Cap's though. 11 years earlier, in 1977, Maruzensky's staff intended to enter him into the Japan Derby, but there was another regulation in place in which horses who were brought over from another country couldn't participate in the classics. As a matter of fact, foreign horses couldn't race in Japan at all. But Maruzensky was born in Japan, so what's the problem? Well, Maruzensky's dam Shill was bought by Zenkichi Hashimoto in Kentucky in 1973 when she was pregnant with a foal of Nijinsky. While still pregnant, Shill would be transported to Japan, and thus, Maruzensky cannot race in the classics as she was a fetus in America. It makes a lot of sense if you don't think about it at all. As you may do right now, people thought this was a really stupid restriction at the time, especially since Maruzensky was undefeated in 5 races, including a record-setting win at the 1976 Asahi High Futurity Stakes. Seiichi Nakano-Watari, Maruzensky's jockey, tried all the logical avenues, saying that he would start from the furthest post outside, saying he didn't even want the prize money, planning a lawsuit, you know. The logical avenues. There was some movement over a relaxation of these rules by the JRA, but after facing heavy opposition, no changes were made and Maruzensky would come to be known as a phantom derby horse, much like Oguri Cap would more than a decade later. This regulation on foreign horses would start to be relaxed over time, starting when the Japan Cup was inaugurated as a global invitational race in 1981 as part of Japan's scheme to try and win foreign races. But it would take another 2 decades for Japan to allow foreign racers in some of their biggest G1 races and almost another decade still for foreign horses to be allowed in all graded races. Unfortunate as it may be for Oguri Cap and Maruzensky, in 1992, the year after Oguri Cap was named JRA's honorary horse after his retirement, a new rule was put into effect that by paying an additional fee by the time of the 3rd and final registration, your horse can be registered if for some reason they missed a fee payment. Which means all you have to do is come up with an additional 2 million yen. The good news is that if it works out, I hear the prize money for winning any of the classics is apparently pretty good. This additional registration rule would come to go by the unofficial term, the Oguri Cap rule. As daunting as 2 million yen may sound, there are horses whose training staff was so convinced they could win a classic race that this rule has been taken advantage of several times over the years, but only 6 horses have found success with it. The first time the Oguri Cap rule was linked to actually winning a classic race was in 1999 when it was taken advantage of by rising star TM Opera O. So that's why they had that one scene together. The situation for TM Opera O was that in the year prior after his first race in 1998, Opera was injured and his staff didn't think he'd even be able to run in the Satsuki show. As such, they didn't make the registration payment and probably used it to buy 110 rules worth of carrots. After winning the following year's Mainichi High, the staff changed their mind, but at that point they had to weigh the heavy decision on if they would pay the 2 million yen additional fee, which is around 210 rules worth of carrots. Eventually, they decided to go for it and were rewarded with TM Opera O emerging victorious in the Satsuki show. The trend wouldn't continue through the other 2 races as he finished 3rd in the Japan Derby and 2nd in the Kika Show, but I think it might have turned out okay for Opera considering he went undefeated the following year, and at the time of his retirement he made the most money of any Japanese racehorse ever. Maybe. Let's move on to 2002. This year had some really cool and awesome racers, so which one do you think it was? Go on, no wrong guesses. Yep, it was Hishi Miracle. Hishi Miracle's case is a little odd. Through his first full year of races in 2001, he raced 7 times and won 0 races, although he did get better placements as the year went on. This trend would be somewhat bucked in early 2002 when he did pick up some wins in open races in addition to some other podium finishes, so his team decided to shoot for the Kika Show. But when you look at the list of races he partook in, you might notice that 2 races are missing. Much like Opera, Hishi Miracle had been injured at the beginning of the year, so his team had no intention of entering the classics. Not only that, but Hishi Miracle's record was bad enough to the point where he didn't even have enough wins to qualify normally, including a loss at his one and only trial race attempt by coming in 6th at the Kobe Shimbunhai. So why suddenly decide to pay 2 million yen for a chance at the 3rd part of the Triple Crown? Oh yeah, that. Fun fact about the Oguri Cap rule though, just because you use it doesn't mean you're automatically in. There were 7 other horses who were in the same boat as Hishi Miracle on the cusp of participating in the Kika Show, and only 3 of them could participate. This was thanks in part to the withdrawals of Kobe Shimbunhai winner Symbolic Chris S, who opted to run in the Autumn Tenno Show instead, and Japan Derby winner Tonino Gimlet due to being forced into an early retirement of destroying fences. Miracle ended up winning a lottery pick to enter in the race. Now, with those threats out of the way, surely Hishi Miracle would have an easier time, right? I don't know why you'd think that. Hishi Miracle entered as the 10th favorite and still had to contend with another of this channel's favorite horses, No Reason. No Reason was the odds-on favorite to win the race, and oh, there goes No Reason, costing the Japan populace 11 billion yen in 2 seconds. Well then, Hishi Miracle then of course went on to win the Kika Show, just barely crossing the finish line before Fast Tateyama, securing winnings of 112 million yen, so I guess it was worth it in the end. Miracle then went on to win the following year's Spring Tenno Show in Takarazuka Kinen and had a long career culminating at the 2005 Spring Tenno Show, coming in last. I mean, you win some, you lose some. There's only one more umamusume character whose counterpart took advantage of the Oguri Cap rule and actually won after doing so. You may have heard of a horse called Kitasan Black, same boat as Oguri Cap, she was in some anime episodes I think. But why would Kitasan Black need to take advantage of the Oguri Cap rule? Surely a horse this famous would have racked up the wins, right? Well, let's take a look at Kitasan Black's first race. There, yeah, first place finish, what's the problem? Huh? The fact of the matter is, Kita was a late bloomer who was deemed to have no future in racing multiple times. When he was a 1-year-old, a trainer who inspected the horse thought he had no hope of being a racehorse at all just because he didn't seem strong enough. Despite this, he began training at 2 years old and had a massive growth spurt, growing from 484 to 554 kilograms, or in freedom-speaking Patriot language, about 1,200 pounds. After this growth spurt, Kitasan Black finally debuted in January 2015, winning 3 straight races including the G2 Spring Stakes, a qualifier for the Satsuki Show, but by now you may have noticed the problem. Kitasan Black debuted on the last day of January in what would be his 3-year-old year. On top of that, his staff was being careful and trying to take it slow because of his prior health concerns. By the time the first and second payments were due, Kitasan Black hadn't even debuted. But because of his growth spurt and wins in his first 3 races, his staff thought he had a solid chance in the classics and paid the additional registration fee. Though he didn't win the Satsuki Show, he did get a podium finish, coming in 3rd behind winner Duramente and 2nd place finish Real Steel, who Kita had defeated in the aforementioned Spring Stakes. He would also go on to place a dominant 14th in the Japan Derby, far behind Duramente once again. After getting a win at the St. Light Keenan, Kita entered the Kika Show as 5th favorite and would once again have to face off with Real Steel, who was 2nd favorite, as Duramente had been pulled from the race due to injury. Kita would go on to win this race, placing a neck ahead of Real Steel and winning his first G1 and prize pool of 112 million yen. And much like TM Pro, went on to have much more success until his retirement after a victory at the 2017 Arima Keenan. Though the rule is taken advantage of pretty consistently, only 3 other horses who don't as of yet have umamusume counterparts are linked with winning after paying the additional fee that we can go over just in case they get added later, so I look really smart and ahead of the curve. In the same year Hishi Miracle entered the Kika Show, Aero Carry took advantage of the Oguri Cap rule after, similar to Oguri Cap, she transferred from Sapporo to Tokyo in December of her 2nd year and thus missed the first registration period. Aero Carry would be the first filly associated with winning a race in the Triple Tiara set of races after taking advantage of the Oguri Cap rule by winning the Oka Show. However, Aero Carry would go on not to race in the other 2 races associated with the Tiara after taking a break during the summer instead of racing in the Japanese Oaks and rethinking the Shuka Show after placing 16th in the Rose Stakes. In 2014, Toho Jackal took advantage of the Oguri Cap rule. Though there were plans of beginning racing at 2 years old, Jackal was afflicted with a debilitating fever that almost cost him his life. Though he did pull through, there were serious reservations over whether or not he could ever race since he had basically been reduced to skin and bones. But he managed to put on most of his lost weight back and began racing in May of his 3rd year. Naturally, this also meant he missed all 3 of the registration periods, but his team was impressed with his 3rd place finish at the qualifying Kobe Shimbun-hai after placing 2nd in 1 and 1st in 2 open races. So they paid the additional fee and entered the Kika Show, where Toho Jackal would win in record time and in the shortest amount of time after debuting, being 149 days after his first race. Despite making a lot of money for himself, Toho Jackal would then go on to be a big reason in costing the Japan populace about 12 billion yen the following year for gold ship-shaped reasons. Alright, let's stop beating around the bush. The horse everybody went into this video wanting to hear about, Misho Mambo, took advantage of the Oguri Cap rule in 2013. Strangely, the only horse called Mambo in the history of space-time, don't look it up, in fact registered for the Oka Show, but no further races in the Triple Tiara set for some reason. Despite a very bad showing in the Oka Show, placing 10th, Mambo's team decided to pay the additional registration fee to enter the Japanese Oaks anyway, since she had won the Fillies Review along with 2 other races. Turns out this was a pretty good decision, as she ended up winning that race and followed it up with wins in the Shuka Show and Queen Elizabeth II Cup, and was thereby selected by the JRA as the best 3-year-old mare that year. So that's pretty good. The following year, Mambo would place 2nd in the Victoria Mile behind Rexina and followed that up with double-digit placements in all but one of her following 19 races. But I mean, yay, good job on the Japanese Oaks, Mambo, yay, can't wait for your implementation, yay!